Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, your co-founder and co-host of the Creative Bird Strategy House and podcast here live on Clubhouse every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let me get myself set up here. We're going to invite some of our peeps and followers on here on Clubhouse as well. And we'll get started with our discussion this morning, exploring economic trends. I'm really excited about this discussion as well. I think we'll get some really great insight to this morning on some great topics that touch in real estate investing and networking. Busy week working with clients. I've been traveling quite a bit. I will give our schedule update in just a minute. Just gonna invite anybody that I'm connected with that's on Clubhouse real quick, as fast as my thumbs will work. And I want to thank our sponsors, of course, to get started here. I'd like to thank MB Capital, your unsecured business line of credit program, where I'm a referral partner. I'd like to thank Lendmark Capital, where I'm a direct private lender nationwide for DSCR, fixed to rent, fixed to flip, new construction, multifamily, and mixed use. And we have a wonderful white label marketing product for all brokers and correspondents to lend our monies out on behalf of real estate professionals throughout the country. So if anybody has any questions on becoming a broker or correspondent, by all means, please reach out to me. I'd like to thank Realty 411, Miss Linda Pelagas, which is a national publication that provides insight on real estate, different subjects, as well as national events throughout the country. And then I'd like to thank Mr. Yardell Perkins, my co-partner, co-founder, co-creator of this podcast, who is with Perkatech, who provides social media, you know, branding and architecture to real estate professionals throughout the country. And we're actually working together on this white label marketing product for brokers. And if you have any questions with him in regards to social media analytics, branding, just strategy, it's a great guy to reach out to. Our discussion today is exploring economic trends, but we first always want to get some updates on some articles that either I posted on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. There's just so many different articles that we're posting out there to give you content to better understand the market. So personally, I think there's some really interesting numbers here, especially in the home sales. Home sales overall was good in December, actually. The numbers were a little higher, but overall the year was obviously a little less, almost comparatively to 1996 numbers. Um, so that was an interesting article that I found. Mortgage rates kind of leveled off at around 7.11 on the conventional side. They're hovering still around 7% in the commercial investment side, which is holding pretty strong. I think inflation is going to keep rates up. I know even with President Trump, telling the Fed, "Hey, we need lower rates." It's not as easy as that one could be said. It'll be yet to see. They're really starting to peel away a lot of the fat that's out there in government that could probably assist some of the inflationary issues, but there's a long trail back. They got a lot of things they need to kind of clean up a little bit to get things toward some stability where the rates do come down, market doesn't stay as bullish. But there's definitely some great articles we posted out there. And I want to thank everybody also. I've been posting some polls out there and articles on LinkedIn and sharing it out through my social media posts, and people have been giving their valued opinion on it, which I really appreciate that. Um, that's really great. I mean, I just put a poll out and like 10 people answered it, and a lot of them were from, Clubhouse and from the podcast, and very much appreciated. So I want to get really into this discussion about economic trends that really ushering in 2025, opportunities in this new era. As we stand on the threshold of a new year, a new era in our nation's leadership, we got to take this opportunity to reflect on the exciting journey we've shared together, in looking ahead to opportunities that 2025 might hold. The January marks the inauguration of a 47th president, and with it comes a sense of renewed optimism, uncertainty, and promise of change. And as a private lender, I understand how pivotal these moments can be, both for our national economy and for the individuals that business we serve. The financial landscape is ever evolving, and we must be ready to adapt, innovate, and respond to the shifting tides. This coming year promises a mix of challenges and opportunities shaped in part by the new administration's policy. And we're going to go over some key areas to discuss, and then we're going to open it up to our moderators, of course. Some trends that really, the waiting game is over. We're here in 2025. We don't have to worry about uncertainty. We know what's shaping up as a turning point for real estate investors and ready to make the next move. Real estate investors are stepping into the new year and with cautious optimism fueled by stabilizing interest rates, fresh market opportunities and new technology transforming how deals get done. For many, the past year felt like a holding pattern, waiting for interest rates to settle, inventory to open up, or markets to finally find their footing. Now, the tides are finally shifting, and the horizon looks bright for those who are ready to adapt. And whether you're a seasoned pro or dipping your toes in the real estate investing, 2025 could offer various challenges and opportunities that might impact your strategy for years. Staying ahead of the curve is key. And what's next? Interest rates are finally leveling out, right? After years of volatility, interest rates are showing signs of stability. Recent Federal Reserve rate cuts are easing borrowing costs. And while not returning to the record low rates of the pandemic, the new normal is much more investor friendly. This creates room for more market activity, benefiting buyers and real estate investors. It's now is the time to reassess your financial strategy, whether you're eyeing a fix to flip project or expanding your rental portfolio. Understanding your numbers will be critical as competition heats up in a more stable environment. Housing inventory, slow but steady improvement. Housing inventory has been tight for years, but there's a faint light at the end of the tunnel. Gradual increases in new construction and are starting to add supply, which could help ease home prices, particularly in markets where affordability has been challenged. That doesn't expect a flood. We don't really expect a flood of options all at once, but there's still a long way to go before demand and supply fully balance out. For investors, this means opportunity. Buyers are still hungry for move-in ready homes, making value add projects like the fixer uppers or a winning strategy. Think of it as a meeting demand halfway, and you'll bring your vision and buyers bring the offers. Obviously, smarter tech, faster deals. Imagine walking into a property within minutes and knowing exactly what the renovations are feasible and what returns could look like, right? That's not just possible, it's happening. AI and data-driven tools are revolutionizing real estate and helping real estate investors identify properties and estimate renovation costs, predict ROI, and secure financing faster than ever. On the lending side, tech-driven platforms are streamlining approvals, giving investors the confidence to move quickly in competitive markets. Expect these tools to become more integrated into your daily workflow. If you're not leveraging technology to make smarter, faster decisions, you're leaving opportunities on the table. This year is going to be embracing tech isn't optional. It's how you stay ahead. And flexibility is your friend. The market's recovery is uneven. The local dynamics matter more than ever. Previously hot markets like Florida and Texas are cooling off, while others are picking up steam for real estate investors. Flexibility will be necessary. If you're new to investing, start small. Cosmetic fixes or short-term holds can help you learn the ropes without overextending. Experienced players might consider a dual strategy, prepping properties for sale, but keeping rental options open in the case the buyer demand doesn't pan out as expected. Being nimble isn't just smart, it's how you thrive when market shifts. A resilient investor mindset. Investor sentiment is looking up in 2025, a mix of lower rates, improved affordability, and more accessible opportunities has many cautiously optimistic about what lies ahead. The mood is hopeful, but not without a dose of realism. For those entering the real estate market, moderated preparation is essential. Partnering with experienced lenders and advisors who will understand your niche market can help you spot opportunities early before they hit the mainstream. Merging markets beyond the usual suspects. Big cities aren't the only places with ample investment opportunities. Smaller markets with growing population, strong growth, strong job growth. One second to see somebody trying to do some spam. Just block out Mr. Coach David Mason and delete his stuff out. Sorry about that. Bye-bye. All right. So don't overlook suburban and outlying areas. Either with remote work sticking around, more renters are leaving city centers in favor of quieter, more spacious options. For investors willing to explore, these markets offer the potential to diversify portfolios and tap into under the radar growth. What does this all mean? The real estate market is entering a new phase in 2025, one where bold moves, smart strategies, and the right partnerships can make all the differences. With stabilizing rates, evolving market dynamics, and tech leading the way, the opportunities are endless for those ready to adapt. If you're scaling up your existing real estate portfolio, you're just getting started. Now this is time to act, learn, and grow. Are you ready for 2025? Is this your year? So some thoughts to think about to get the discussion working on exploring economic trends. But I know we want to get an update from Bob in regards to LLC and the Transparency Act. So, Bob, why don't you give a quick overview of who you are, what you do, and an update to our discussions on Transparency Act with the LLC?
Thanks, Joe. First of all, can everybody hear me? I was having some issues with audio.
Yes.
Okay, good. So my name is Bob Chesek. I'm president of Chespin Corporation. I set up corporations, LLCs for people. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I wanted to give a fast update, and thank you, Joe, for throwing the mic to me, because I told everybody last week that we were waiting on the Supreme Court to make a ruling on the Corporate Transparency Act and the BOI reports. The Supreme Court voted 8-1 to remove the injunction against the CTA, thus making the BOI reports due immediately. However, there was a surprise when FinCEN made the formal announcement on Friday. We were waiting for FinCEN to announce that they are going to start enforcing again. The announcement was that apparently off the radar, another court case from a different federal judge in a different court in Texas issued a separate injunction on January 7th, and FinCEN has determined that while the original injunction has been removed, the Supreme Court did not only narrowly ruled on the first injunction, not the second one. Therefore, the BOIs are still officially voluntary. And at this point, as far as we know, there is now a second injunction against the BOI reports despite the Supreme Court's ruling. And the Supreme Court's ruling was only in effect until the original case was heard on March 25th. So stand by, folks. We're not done with this from a long shot. But as of this moment, you do not need to file a BOI. There is no penalty for failure to file. You may elect to do so voluntarily just in case the injunction gets lifted without warning. I know people are going to have a lot of questions about this, and I do not want to go away from the main topic today. So when Joe closes this room today, I will open a separate room up independently of this one around 10 o'clock or whenever he closes out, where I will get into more detail about this and take some Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions, please hold them for the follow-up room or for my room that I do later this week called the Business of Real Estate. Joe, that's it for the CTA BOI update.
So, Bob, how do you see this impacting the real estate investor in 2025? Like, what do you see? How do you see this? How will it shake out, over the year and into the next couple years? Like, what does this do to the newer investor? What does this do to the more seasoned investor? Is it just forcing people to get up to date, or they're going to kind of get pushed to the side? What's going to be the end up result here?
Well, the result so far of it has been, and we're finally starting to get the numbers from 2024 on a nationwide scale. There has definitely been a noticeable drop off in the number of people forming LLCs, because while admittedly this is a little bit misguided because of a lot of misinformation, one of the main reasons people form LLCs is not just for the legal protection, it's also because they're trying to maintain a degree of anonymity. And the CTA effectively takes that barrier, or takes that away. Now, while the CTA, the BOI reports, which are part of the CTA, sorry, I'm using so many different phrases here. While they are not public information, financial institutions are going to have to start doing due diligence checks against them. And some banks are already requiring copies of the BOI transcripts. And if you didn't download one when you filed your BOI, now you have a problem, because you cannot get one after you file. But so it's going to impact financial institutions and transactions. But also, as a result of this, several states, starting this year with Pennsylvania, next year with New York, and a handful of others, are now starting to require public disclosure and transparency of LLC ownership and management. Pennsylvania launched their system as of January 6th. Annual reports are now due for all LLCs by September 30th. If you don't file and you're 6 months late, your LLC is canceled by Pennsylvania. Next year, New York will be launching their own version of the CTA, which is independent of the federal government, and it's going to be even more. It's going to even offer more disclosure publicly, including the home addresses of the owners of LLCs. And there's not going to be a way to protect your personal information from that. Neither Pennsylvania nor New York offers an opt-out option. It's full public disclosure. So the bottom line being, it's giving real estate investors a lot of pause as to whether or not they want to form LLCs because of the simple concern of how much information about them personally is going to enter the public domain.
I feel like this is a positive outlook for real estate investors and investments in 2025. I feel like it's going to weed out the bad element, and I could see a rebound in the investment space because there's so much money now in the LLC lending landscape. And the rates are very strong and stable for investors to get their head wrapped around this. I mean, I almost think it's going to maximize the renter capacity of for the investor and the landlord and lower the consumer interest in buying properties because it's going to make everything very professional and clean for the LLC and for the ownership of that LLC. I mean, Bobby, you can remember 10, 15 years ago, it was whispers in the wind for somebody that can get an LLC refi or purchase. Now that's the most common loan ever being done, right? I mean, like you don't know anybody that's not doing a DSCR or a fixed to rent or fixed to flip in the LLC. So, what does this do to the new investor? They won't know any better other than the right way, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And one of the things about it, and I saw flashing through the comments here, there was the questions about personal safety of the owners, and the answer is that it was decided. To whoever posted that, just FYI, it was decided that the public interest of knowing who runs the LLCs and where they reside was deemed a more important matter than the personal safety of the owners of the LLC. You might not like that answer, but that is the answer.
Yeah.
But as far as, yes, you're correct. When people start the LLCs now, they're going to have to, and corporations for that matter, I should note corporations are wrapped up in this too, as well as LPs if you go that route. We're not talking about trusts, they're a whole different animal. But generally speaking, this is going to make it a lot harder for somebody to hide behind a cloak of secrecy. If you have a bad land, I mean, one of the reasons that New York passed the law was literally to weed, and this was the governor of New York stated this, whether you believe it or not. Her comment was, "We have so many slumlords and bad landlords who are absentee. We're going to force them to publicly disclose themselves so their tenants can find them." That was her exact rule. I'm paraphrasing, but you get the point. So actually, the New York version was specifically targeted at real estate investors, but it's a wide net for any LLC. But what you're going to see now is people are going to have to be more thoughtful in the creation, operation, and management of the LLC, and they're just going to have to be more transparent that yes, this is this is who we are. Yes, this is our business. But what it will also do is, like you said, Joe, the bad actors are going to get called out on it real quick. And I think you're probably going to see an exodus of a lot of, for lack of a better phrase, bad LLCs.
Yeah.
They're either going to be abandoned or closed. I'm already seeing that. I'm getting a lot of shutdown requests, particularly in Pennsylvania, because they don't want to disclose the personal information in the annual reports.
Mm-hmm.
New York will probably follow suit next year. But right now, what I'm going to see for you personally as a lender is you're going to have a much cleaner process vetting who you want to lend money to. And people will have a much cleaner process vetting who their landlords are going forward if they're doing rentals or who their deals are. So basically, you'll now be able to have a check and balance system to make sure that who you're talking to is actually who you're dealing with.
Yeah, I'm seeing it in the foreign national loans. I have quite a few being submitted this week, and the detail behind foreign national loans now in the LLC has gotten very interesting. We I have we had a lot of concerns about a couple, loans coming in, and we were able to kind of really dive into what was needed, and a lot of loan officers just don't know. So we broke it down for a couple LOs because they're getting into the foreign national space. But at the same time, the asset-based lenders want to be cautious. They just don't want to lend to any foreign national because, again, we want full transparency because we're balance sheeting these loans, in the new year. And, and the trends are telling us the buying for multifamily and suburban migration affordable housing demand is only going up. So suburban growth is moving up. Affordable housing investments are needed more than ever. Workforce housing, affordable rental units. Um, and I think with what Bob's discussing today and what we brought into some economic trends, you don't have to stay in the urban settings. You don't just have to go into the cities to make money as a landlord. There are some massive opportunities in the suburban markets. I'm going to give you a great example. I went down to the outside skirts of Baltimore this past week. I went to an area called Laurel and really cute suburban markets, a lot of revitalization, a lot of ethnicity in the restaurants and the renovations, and you could just feel a very cool vibe. But I knew this area was a little probably rough at one time. But man, did I see the improvement? I saw the excitement of the landlord, and it wasn't all about buying in the city. It was about buying in the suburban markets and not always dependent upon Section 8 housing, but looking at the market rent, identifying really good clients for long-term holds. But there's people that just can't afford to buy a house. They lost a lot of their savings because of inflation and cost of living, but they can rent and they got decent credit where they're approvable. They got jobs and they just want to live in a nice place. There's a very interesting blend of people now. There's the individual that wants to live in the eat, work, and live environment, have a nice little co-working space for themselves, have potential gym in the place, eateries down below in the retail space. And then there's the person that wants that single family row home with a little backyard, have a little garden. And then there's the people that want to live out where they can work remote, be convenient to transportation, but yet having the convenience of a quiet environment. There's such an interesting blend of your type of renter now. It's not just like, hey, I'm just going to go buy in the cheapest area in the hood and rent to the lowest form of renter and take all the risk on. You don't have to do that to make money in in the investment space. You don't have to do that anymore. And this is the thing, lenders don't want to do that either. You don't think we're looking at crime stats? We're looking at concerns about the government in those local municipalities that are not doing well. We're looking at all that. We're doing a whole full look around. Yes, we're going to make sure that our loans stay safe and our clients stay above water. So, sustainability is key. Okay. Market specific trends right now. I'm seeing Southeast markets like Nashville, Atlanta, Orlando continuing to attract new residents and businesses, creating opportunities for residential and commercial investments. Southwest expansion. I see markets like Phoenix, Las Vegas benefit from population growth and strong rental demand. Making these prime locations for multifamily and single family rentals. And then there's the Midwest affordability. Cities like Indianapolis and Kansas City are gaining attention for their affordability and stable rental markets, appealing to value-focused investors. And I do see an urban recovery, okay? While suburban growth remains strong, urban markets are showing signs of recovery, particularly in cities with robust financial services, and tech industries. I think New York City is going to rebound. I'm concerned about San Francisco, but hey, listen, crazier things have happened. I maybe there will be a rebound there, okay? But I see an immediate change in New York City since President Trump has come back into office. Some challenges we want to watch in 25. High home prices. While mortgage rates are stabilizing, rising home prices continue to strain affordability, particularly for first-time home buyers. Economic uncertainty. While the economy is expected to remain resilient, external factors such as inflation and geopolitical events could impact market stability. And then there's regulatory shifts. Changes in the tax laws or housing policies could influence the profitability of certain investments, particularly in high tax states. Staying informed and adaptable will be key to navigating these challenges successfully. Linda, good morning and welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, exploring economic trends.
Good morning, Joseph. So nice to be here. Good morning, Burr investors. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Linda Pliagas, and I've been a real estate agent in California for over 17 years, a landlord for over 20, and I also own Realty411.com. We're a news and information website for real estate investors. Now, investors, knowing the signs of a turning economy will help investors stay informed and ahead of the curve. And it'll certainly help them become more informed and timely investors and make better decisions. Now, with this in mind, I'd like to explore the top economic indicators that measure a country's economic performance and stability. And really, there's not a lot of them. There's the GDP, the gross domestic product, which is the total value of all goods and services produced. The consumer spending index, how is consumer spending driving the economy, the unemployment rate, and also new home construction, the number of houses or apartments being built. Now, a great place to start doing research on all these economic indicators is the Bureau of Economic Analysis. You can also find great information in the International Monetary Fund website, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And guess what, everyone? Everything can be found online and it's absolutely free. So you can really stay on top of the economy by researching just a few websites. And reading the overall economy and macroeconomics is a great place to start. But in my opinion, it all ends with your personal economy. So it's important to make an honest assessment of your family's microeconomic status. So, what's your debt to income ratio? Can you improve your credit score? Are you saving on a regular basis? And are you already a homeowner or are you still renting? You should ask yourself these questions, and assessing your personal economy and knowing your personal economic indicators is so important as well. So you can start and expand your real estate empire. Thank you, Joseph. Back to you.
So, Linda, let's get an update on Realty Forum One first, and then two, the LA market post fire, and then with President Trump coming back into office. What have you seen over the last? It's been probably an amazing 30 days of craziness back and forth. What's your? Let's get some Realty Forum One updates, and then your thoughts to the last 30 days in California with wildfires.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, Joseph, we just published a new issue. You can find it online. It's a great magazine packed with fantastic information and insight, all available for free as a download. Of course, you can also subscribe and get a print edition. So that's what's new. We also have an event coming up, an in-person event coming up in Long Beach, California, February 22nd. We have investors and companies flying in from around the country. We're going to be networking right in front of the dock of Long Beach. The Queen Mary will be visible. We'll have the yachts right in front of us. It's going to be an amazing event. I encourage everyone to go to realty411.com to find out more information. In regards to the Palisades fire, oh wow, what a terrible disaster Southern California is going through. It's an absolute mess. We have one of our family members that has a business in Santa Monica, California. His business was greatly impacted because all of his clients lived in the Palisades. So he's really concerned about the future of his business. And it's just a horrible time for people in Southern California and Los Angeles right now. Unfortunately, State Farm and Farmers did drop a lot of those people that were in that fire zone. They have dropped them with their insurance. So a lot of people did have insurance, but there were people that were not covered by any fire insurance. So, of course, those people, have lost everything. And it's a very scary time for a lot of people. It's absolutely devastating. I've heard of price gouging going on where, landlords are trying to rent their properties out for 3-4 times more what the going rate is to try and take advantage of what's going on, but they are cracking down on real estate agents and landlords that are trying to gouge victims of the fire. I have been reading where they're going after them if they find out that they're trying to take economic advantage of people that have been impacted by the Palisades fire or the Altadena fire. And I think there's a lot of hope. President Trump did visit Southern California and the fire region on Friday, I think, and he participated in a roundtable discussion. I think that brought a lot of hope to people in Southern California, knowing that their plight is being taken seriously and that the president himself came to the area to not only assess what's going on, but to try and find solutions with the mayor of Los Angeles and with the other political figures that run this city. So I think that was a wonderful move that happened, and that's definitely going to create a lot of hope for people that are hurting right now in the area.
It's good to know. I appreciate the update, Linda. I was obviously very concerned, and prayers were being put out to you and your group out there because I know that's like when I was out at the LA RIA, that's probably within miles of where the fires were impacted the most. So it'll be interesting to watch predatory activity out there at the same time.
Yes, thank you so much, Joseph. We really appreciate your prayers and your thoughts, everyone. There are a lot of people hurting, and we just really appreciate the fact that our government is taking it so seriously and really responding in a quick manner. That makes a lot of difference for people.
Thanks, Linda. This ties into real estate investing financing trends going into 25. Understanding alternative financing. There's a lot of information being thrown out in Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. But at the end of the day, asset-based lending is going to be the primary focus for real estate investors in 2025. I'm predicting 70% of the single family through four family refinance or purchase of DSCR will be done with an asset-based lender in lieu of a bank. So where are the banks left to work on, right? You wonder, like, okay, if there's so much money in our space, what are the banks left to do? Well, there's SBA, there's a certain type of mixed use properties, but there are now some mixed use DSCR products coming out. I just saw a new one coming out for 1 through 8 units for mixed use, as long as it's favored of 51% or better of rentable square footage for of residential to commercial. So that was interesting to watch and see. It's 30-year fixed money. So that was something I saw just roll out in the last month, in 2025, which was not available in 2024. I see an increase in construction money and I see rates leveling off and coming down. Right now, construction money is as low as 9.5% for a client with a certain type of credit and experience in the last 8 years. And the emphasis on refinancing, I was with a colleague of mine, Yordell Perkins, Perkatech, at an event yesterday afternoon, and it was about 15, 20 investors, young investors in the Philadelphia market. And man, they couldn't get anybody on the phone to talk about DSCR. They could not get anybody to discuss, pricing. I popped my laptop up and showed them how you price a loan out. I mean, they were like, wow, this is great. Emphasis, they were so excited to understand the visual opportunity that could be out there, working with somebody. And I'm like, yeah, man, this is how it works. So I'm really starting to pay attention um, to what clients' needs are. It's becoming so apparent they're not either being educated or provided accessibilities to the lending options that are out there. So, being, these type of sources that we're offering here on the podcast and through Clubhouse is giving real estate investors an overall outlook for where property investment will be in 2025. There's going to be challenges like affordability and economic uncertainty remain. But the market outlook overall, I think, remains really positive with stabilizing mortgage rates and growing demand fueling optimism. Understanding these trends and leveraging innovative financing solutions will be vital for investors to capitalize on this year's opportunities. Whether pursuing single family to four family, multifamily meaning a 5+ unit, maybe looking at mixed use with a commercial blend to residential, maybe looking at fixed to rent or fixed to flip. I have a client right now, like he does everything fixed to flip. And if he doesn't sell it right away at the price he wants, he takes it off the market and immediately refinances it and occupies it with somebody. He takes the chance of flipping the property, but it's not always going to work out. Stephen, good morning and welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, exploring economic trends.
Yeah, this is Steve Franco. I'm a broker and investor up in northeastern PA, and actually, this is a really exciting time up here in Thoreau, Pennsylvania, because the change in the law for wholesaling means that the trend is going to be, well, the law now is that for residential wholesaling, you have to be a licensed agent working with a broker. And what, of course, for my business, that's great because I'm one of the few brokers leaning into that audience instead of leaning away from it, saying, yeah, get your license, join my firm, or if you're a broker who wants to do wholesale or whatever, let me partner with you and kind of hold your hand through it. And what we're seeing around here is honestly no slowing down of the unlicensed bad wholesalers yet. I don't think this law is all that effective, but hopefully the enforcement will be. But what we're seeing around here on the economic trends is really continued growth. And obviously it's, there's a lag between elections and what changes, but is more commercial development means more housing need, means more all the way down the line. And actually, I've just been looking into a new market a little bit south of me where commercial development continues. They're kind of out of housing. And so it's really going to be an exciting time, I think, in the affordable market, in the affordable housing space and mixed-use space, and also self-storage space, because in a market like this, there's not a lot of storage built into the houses. I don't know how else to say it. They don't have closets. They don't have, a lot of times, don't have basements or attics. So you're kind of stuck. So when you have increased occupation of the houses, you have increased need for self-storage. So it's going to be a fun time. I think the rates are going to be interesting. And, my only real concern is really going to be in terms of what the various, I guess, sideline political stories that are coming out, how that confuses the average person. I don't think it's going to affect the investor category, but what does that do to the surrounding areas? I do have a little bit of concern. I don't mind the BOI. I already did it, but I'm a little wondering why there was such a low cap on the corporation size set. And I'm a little concerned why small homeowners were forced to put their home address in. I understand being able to find the bad actors, but the bad actors are going to lie anyway. For those of us who rent in the smaller spaces, it could be a safety issue. There could be a bad tenant or a bad boyfriend or whatever. So I did it, whatever, fine, I don't care. But I did sort of raise my question: how come it's only the smaller companies have to do it, and how come we have to put our home addresses out there? We literally have to let a mistake we might have put into our apartment become a problem for our home family.
Well, I'm going to go back to first I'm going to say, let's talk about your market. Your rural settings are now becoming your suburban settings out where you are, and you're getting a whole influx of newer investors, out-of-state landlords, as well as in-state landlords, but more on the out-of-state landlords. And I think for the LLC transparency, and this will be a defense of, maybe Bob will give some additional insight, is there's some really bad out-of-state landlords. And I think that's where I think some of the concerns might be here, because of asset-based lending. And there's so much money being thrown to out-of-state landlords to buy wherever they want, and maybe not being ethical. Or do you know how many background checks that I have to deal with, Steve, at this point, that are just, I'm amazed that people think they can get a loan. You know what I mean?
Well, I fully agree with that. And let me be clear. Give the information to the entity, to the government, to BOI, no problem. Put a barrier to keep the individual from getting it who isn't qualified. Let the loan officer
Yeah.
get it. Let them get it. I don't care about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about where the happy middle is. Bob, do you want to give any additional insight before we go on to the other moderators?
Unfortunately, what it comes down to is just whatever decisions the politicians in each individual state made at the time they did this. New York, like I said, was strongly motivated by forcing landlords to provide their home address for the general public. Pennsylvania's was actually born out of the fact that Pennsylvania had no mechanism to close down abandoned companies, and it was actually making the availability of business names very difficult. And with the passage of the Corporate Transparency Act, I think the best example I could give is my business partner Eric, or as Joe calls him, the elusive Eric, because he's rarely seen. But his parents owned a hardware store outside of Scranton, and if you were to look up the records of it on the Pennsylvania database, it lists his mother as the president of the company. His mother died in 1994. There's 30 years later, there was no way. 31 years later, there was no way for them to update the records to reflect who the new president was. So in the case of Pennsylvania, it was the fact that it was a bunch of out-of-date information with a bunch of businesses listed as active where everyone involved might already be dead. Yeah. So the motivations were different in each state. Then you have states like Florida that put EIN numbers in a public database, to which my answer is you might as well put everyone's social security number on their license plate. But unfortunately, it just comes down to some states just thought, oh, this is a good idea. Let's just make it all public. Some had a specific purpose, and some probably just passed the law without even reading it. So there's no across the board answer for that. Steve, in your case, I know with Pennsylvania being your concern, it was because of the large number of abandoned businesses in Pennsylvania that were still listed as active, and the state had no way to clean up the books. So in Pennsylvania's case, but unfortunately, they decided to go with the full public disclosure as part of that. So that's Pennsylvania's motivation specifically.
And one thing I want to add, and Steve, just keep your thought there. The largest foreclosure of investment properties in 2008 were properties in the name of the LLC in the state of Pennsylvania, in the country. The largest amount of foreclosures of investment properties in the country were in the state of Pennsylvania and were in the name of an LLC. Stephen, a little additional insight, and we'll go back to our discussion on economic trends.
Well, my first thought when you said that is, let me have that list. I'll go after those properties.
That's 2008.
My main point is that, like you're saying, the rural is becoming the suburban as Amazon keeps right down the highway, 81 and so forth, running more and more centers. I think they're putting up, there are 18 more warehouses or something going up in Hazleton. So if you just look at the map, Hazleton's already saturated with housing being overpriced. Now it's time to go further than that. I think that's where a lot of the growth in the affordable market is going to come, is frankly looking at where the logistics are, because people they're not going away from their Amazons, they're not going away from their home shopping. So logistics and warehousing is going to be one of the barriers, at least in regions like this.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm focusing my efforts coming forward.
There's going to be some additional things that you need to keep in mind in current trends. Increased spending on new and existing properties is going to be very, very important. More demand for flexible spaces, a shift away from high-risk areas, right? Second-tier market investments, AI-driven property analysis, portfolio diversification, increased social impact investing, more demand for eco-friendly real estate. There's obviously going to be a prioritization of water availability and flood risk, thanks to California concerns there. Rising interest in mixed-use developments, which I'm starting to see some of that in the DSCR space, an increased desire for shared workspaces. I mean, Yardell and I are talking about opening our own right now because there's a lack of workspace in certain areas that we feel are necessary. I think you're going to see partnerships between small investment firms and larger organizations. You're going to see a growth in co-living spaces. You're going to see digital infrastructure investments, a rise to data-driven investing platforms, standardization of virtual reality tours, hyper-targeted marketing, which I'm focusing on right now with my social media branding, and a rise in property prices. I mean, it's going to get a little crazy for the consumer and a little more realistic for the investor. Justin, good morning and welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, exploring economic trends.
Good morning, Justin Jefferson. I'm an investor, broker, and a project manager down here in southern Louisiana area. And Joe, you touched on something earlier that I guess wanted to start with, and that's the quality of the asset that you're looking at. I know 2012, 13 era, there were still a lot of investors in my area recommend go find the $10,000 house, go get the $8,000 house. The problem is when I go to my next phase, whether that's an exit to resell or what have you, I might be closer to the bottom of the barrel because of the condition of the house. Things that would do to touch up the house to make it livable, but collect rent. I think tenants. First of all, the tenants are gonna. That's gonna be the last property that gets leased out, right? And being a landlord, I think not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to have a brand new product, but I think considering right now is a good time where the rates are and where the potential is for infrastructure improvements and investments in the United States. So it looks that look to be coming in. I think it's a good time to really invest in a little bit better property. a little bit better area for the longevity of your investment or whatever it is you might be putting your funds up for. And if you can take advantage of any sort of affordable housing opportunities, I think those are going to be great as well coming up in the future. So those are just some quick thoughts that I have.
Well, Justin, it makes me think of like I look at landlords doing renovations now. Like, why the heck would you ever put carpet in? Like hardwood laminate.
Right.
I mean, like why would you ever put carpet anywhere? Let them put throw rugs down, man. That just saves a whole load of bullshit for turning over a property if you have hardwood laminate flooring. And like, I mean, granite countertops, why would you do a laminate countertop at this point? I mean, I would use the laminate sheets to put around all the walls to protect the walls up to 6 feet high or along the hallways and the common area maintenance areas. But I mean, you got to spend money wisely when you're doing these renovations on these properties. Like to me, if you're going to put in new railings on any stairwells, put removable railings. How are people going to get stuff moved in and out without banging things up and ripping the railings off? Make removable railings. It's not that hard. A contractor, it's the same cost, right? You have to be dynamic and ever evolving, shaped by shifting economic conditions, trends. Real estate investors have to stay agile and adaptable every time a new year comes. You know, you have to help stay ahead of the game, discussing big investment trends. You got to understand how to renovate the property the right hard way because you're going to have turnover. You're going to have questionable tenants. You're going to have crappy tenants. You got to just be smarter about what you're doing. Timothy, good morning. Long time no see. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and exploring economic trends.
Good morning, Joseph. Good morning, room. Timothy Doyle with Steel Hill Properties. I'm a landlord, buy and hold real estate investor. I currently here in, somewhat the greater Northeast, but a little south of Stephen in the Lehigh Valley. Some of the trends and some of the discussions and points of discussion up here were great. And I think there was one thing, and Bob, please correct me if I'm incorrect, because this is not exactly my wheelhouse, was with the Corporate Transparency Act. You have that, you can register, we're supposed to register with that, but I believe there was a court that blocked it. I believe it was in Texas, a Texas court blocked it. But also with that, and I did everything right and correctly. But I do believe that there may be, with that and also with a wholesaling license, I believe that there are still loopholes to be closed out there that people are exploiting, potentially. So I'd like to eventually circle back on that a little bit, but I think that's a topic for another day. With exploring some of the economic trends that are going out. And for me, it's kind of too early to tell. And of course, right now I'm working with, my business model. I'm working with still a little bit of scared money just due to some of the repair work and some of the other things that I've had to do. So I'm kind of watching and seeing where my money can be best leveraged, what kind of profit deltas I would have, and as far as what kind of model I would use if I were to do a fix and flip versus a buy and hold for short-term income to help fuel some of my long-term investments, what that would look like. Unfortunately, I also have a FTE during the week. I'm also a project manager for a very large hospital system here in Pennsylvania, which has been keeping me very, 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 very busy lately due to a large acquisition. But other than that, I'm sitting back and listening. So, Joseph, thank you again for inviting me to the room. Again, Timothy Doyle with Steel Hill Properties. Remember, can't buy it, steal it.
Thanks, Timothy. Some bullet point facts that I want to outline with this discussion of exploring economic trends. Fact: small cities, big appeal. Due to the rise of remote work, more and more people have recently chosen to move to smaller cities. Fact: renters on the rise. Goldman Sachs research says home prices will continue to increase as the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, making it more difficult for the younger generation to purchase homes. Fact, shifting focus on tenant experience. Tenant experience refers to the various aspects that impact an occupant's time in a rental property. Example, services and amenities, maintenance and cleanliness, quality communication with their landlord or property manager. Another fact, prop tech for property management. Property prop tech is one of the many innovations drastically changing how properties are bought, sold, and managed. And obviously, rising interest and inflationary rates it's going to impact trends over the next several years till we see a better rate in the market. Good morning, Anna. Welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, exploring economic trends.
Good morning. I'm Anna Marco. I'm a listing agent and mentor and investor here in Chester County, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm feeling it for the younger generation, for the first-time home buyers. Also, as being an investor and spending my day yesterday in Middlesex County, New Jersey, it is horrendous for anyone who needs or wants to buy a first home, a single family, itty bitty something, is really just crazy. Just to give you like an example, we looked at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,100 square foot single family home that was within 500 feet of power lines. Right. And so I couldn't believe that that open house was ridiculous. They already have multiple offers. No one seems to even care about that it's in there, right there in the backyard. And they're just going to pay a ridiculous amount of money for it. And it just, at long term, it just doesn't make sense. Like, is that going to be a regrettable buy for that particular buyer in, whatever, 5 years, 6 years, when they want to go sell it? If the market's not continuous to, being this ridiculous, at what point was that just like not a smart buy where you're going to lose money?
Yeah, we're in Middlesex County, if you don't mind me asking. So I'm from Union County.
Oh, yeah. This particular house was in South Amboy. In fact, if anyone on here is doing any wholesaling in that area, can maybe, anything off market, I am looking. It would be a cash offer. I would waive inspections up to $500,000 on a, smaller single family property. But I got to tell you, it is kind of ridiculous. We like South Amboy because, pretty much anywhere in South Amboy, you're 5 to 7 minutes to the train,
Yeah.
which is necessary for my son. And location-wise, it just makes sense. Monmouth County is also a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, when I look, it's just crazy to me because I live on 6 acres, like 5,000 square feet. My real estate taxes are $10,000 and change, right? These $400,000-$500,000 homes have real estate taxes of like $8,000 and $9,000. It's just crazy. Like, how does a young person, a young couple, a family, like how, when you're looking at 20% down on any one of these homes, your pity payment is, 4,000 and change. I just don't understand how they're doing it and how they're all rushing to buy it, right? Like, it's, at the end of the day, it will always be a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, right?
Yeah.
Unless you put on a solid addition, which this house does not call for it. Like, you just talk about wasting even more money, right? It would rent for $2,500 to $2,600 a month. The numbers just don't make sense. And yet it gets worse and worse. I'm like one of those terrible buyers, who's waiting for the market to change. And it's not that I'm waiting for it to change and I'll pay more and I'll spend more for the right house. I just can't get over the crap that people will buy.
Well, it's interesting because, I'm very familiar with that entire corridor. I'm very concerned about the tax base there overall, Anna. A lot of industry has kind of left. Big pharma used to be very popular in New Jersey, and it's left a lot of small communities where the taxes have just gone completely out of control. I do agree on affordability. It's really going to be for a very certain demographic to afford, or you're going to have kids staying home with their parents. This is the highest level of children living with parents since the Depression. So, New Jersey is just not a place where people are migrating to. They're migrating out of, or they're moving to the southernmost tip of New Jersey, like in Cumberland County, Salem County, Gloucester County, or Atlantic County, because the taxes, for whatever reason, because maybe the industrial warehousing down there has subsidized a lot of that tax hit, and it hasn't been as impacted. But you're an extra hour away down the turnpike, so it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to
which
watch.
doesn't make sense if you work in New York. My
No,
younger son, he's looking to rent with two of his friends in Hoboken. Don't even get me started. They cannot find a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for
Mhm.
under $4,800 a month.
Yeah.
Like an apartment, obviously, not a house. Ridiculous. So basically, it's a 3-bedroom, which one of the bedrooms doesn't even have a window. Like, how do you even call that a bedroom?
Yeah.
1 bath. So 3 guys. Like, how are you going to live with 1 bathroom? And that particular one is 4,500. So that's a little bit more affordable for them. No parking, no anything. I don't get it. I don't and I wish that they found jobs and wanted to settle here in Pennsylvania, but unfortunately they went back to where we came from.
Yeah, I get it.
Is what it
No,
is.
it's evolving in New Jersey. I'd agree. I mean, this year in 2025 is shaping up to be pivotal for real estate investors, especially in the mid Atlantic area, particularly focused on passive income. We're yet to see significant legislation changes that could make some economic adjustments and hopefully some technological advancements on the rise, for seeing where some of the trends go in the single family through four family space or even the multifamily space. I really do feel booming secondary markets are going to be something to watch out for. I think regulatory shifts impacting investments are going to be extremely interesting to watch. Tech driven investing, risk management strategies. I think there's going to be some gold mine of opportunities in the Midwest. I think demographic shifts are driving demand. My conclusion to this discussion today is, passive investors face a world of opportunities and challenges by understanding the latest trends and leveraging advanced tools and adhering to regulations. Investors can achieve their goals, whether exploring, different type of asset types or partnerships or uh, new investment areas. You have to accept the fact you got to evolve. I'll give you a little background on what we're doing here at L&I. We're evolving with my social media brand with the podcast and looking into Google Words instead of Google Ads, and we're looking into video clips, and we're looking into all the social media buckets. It's obviously making a difference in the inbound inquiry for the podcast. So if we're just doing it on that, can you imagine if you start shape shifting on your desire, what type of asset you're looking at, or what type of real estate agent you want to be in 2025? Do you want to work with buyers? Do you want to be investor friendly? Do you want to just list investment properties and flip and work with flippers? Anna was talking about working with potential wholesalers. I'm getting back into the North Jersey market. I'm supporting and sponsoring a lot of sub 2 events in the tri-state area, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York. We have events now that we're offering now in South Jersey, North Jersey, Philadelphia, Lehigh Valley. We're trying to get in front of people with the right education, the right information, low selling points, but providing really great insight and bringing people together in a team like work atmosphere. I'm seeing that trend happening more. I think people are getting away from being sold something and being provided something, and it being rewarding, not an awarding environment. It has to feel rewarding. So I want to thank our.
That is so true. But I do
Yeah.
have a question before you move on.
Yeah.
Long term, and because you're from that area as well, if you could buy, that smaller single family with the high taxes in Middlesex County, uh, let's say 12 to 1,500 square feet, and the taxes are 8 or 9,000 versus and about a $500,000 price point versus, let's say, going over to Monmouth County, specifically Marlborough, and spending a couple $100,000 more on a home, but the taxes are the same. And then like the 5-year plan, my bet would be that the house in Marlborough, I can't even say the word, will increase more over those years than the property in Middlesex County. Would you agree?
I'm concerned about affordability. I wouldn't buy a single family in either market if I was a younger demographic in my 25 to 30-year market. I would look at a two family. I'd look at Carteret. I'd look at Rawway. I'd look at Linden. I'd look at I'm trying to think of a couple areas. Sayreville. I'd look at some outskirt markets a little beyond where the train station availability is or transportation availability. I think there's more appreciable opportunities there and better renters. So that's my personal opinion, but you know what opinions are like. But I wouldn't buy a heavier asset in an area like Monmouth County, Marlboro, to look at as an appreciable. I don't see us making another 30% appreciation on real estate like we did the past 5 years. I think maybe like somewhere between 10 and 12% over the next 5 years. So I'd have some concerns there in some of those bigger priced assets. So I hope that comes across in the right way. And I think this was a great discussion. We're here every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing education, networking, and strategy. Uh, you can find all of our podcasts on the creativebirdstrategies.com website. You can find us on, Audible, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, even TikTok now. I want to thank our sponsors, of course. I want to thank Mr. Yordell Perkins of Perkatech, who is really the backbone to this entire podcast, social media strategist, advisor. I'd like to thank Ms. Linda Pelagas, really 411. I'd like to thank MB Capital, who is an unsecured business line of credit program where I'm a referral partner. I'd like to thank Lendmark Capital, where I'm a direct private lender nationwide, providing insight and leverage and availability for money for real estate investors. I'd like to thank our new relationship with Elite Dealmakers, where we're now offering educational events in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I'm working with Jim Ingersoll out of Richmond, Virginia, where we're expanding it from South Jersey to North Jersey to Lehigh Valley to Philadelphia. We're now also working with the Sub 2 community, providing uh, sponsorship and presence of their events and really providing the excitement to creativity and opportunities to up and coming investors in that sub two community. I really appreciate that community as well. We're sponsoring a bunch of events in February, and I know Bob will be having a follow up room to this as well. I want to thank everybody for their engagement this morning, and this was a great podcast today. I want to thank everybody that was on here. And my quote this morning: "Life is like a book. Some chapters are sad, some are happy, some are exciting. But if you never turn the page, you will never know what the next chapter has in store for you. Have a great week. Stay in touch. Call to action. Reach out to your moderators here. Anybody has any questions, concerns, insight, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to work with you. This is Joe Scarice, co-founder and co-host, Creative Birth Strategies, and we'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds. And thank you. Be well.